delighted to welcome our panel members to the stage here, and we're going to get to know them a little bit better. And let's see, here we are, and we've got everybody. All right, great. All right, folks. Now, before we dive into what I know all of you are here for is a discussion on the backup plan for solo agers. I want to properly thank and recognize one of our positive aging community champions, Jenny Pearson, who is with an unbelievable program called Pennsylvania Relay. Jenny, for those folks that may not be familiar with relay systems in Pennsylvania nationwide, tell us a little bit about this innovative program.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Pennsylvania Relay is a free public service for Pennsylvania residents who have difficulty using a telephone. That could be as a result of hearing or speech differences. One of the programs that we like to talk about is our caption telephone service, which provides a device that will caption what the other person is saying as you're listening on the phone call so that you're able to read what they're saying on the phone.
I love it. Now, the best part about your program is it's pretty much free of charge, no matter what relay program you're signed up for. But tell us how how does this work?
So the Pennsylvania Relay is able to provide the services at no cost through a federal funding program through the Federal Communication Commission. We are able to provide devices at no cost as well. Some of the services that we provide, of course, caption telephone. We can also provide services like speech to speech for individuals who have difficulty being understood over the phone because they may have a speech difference. Traditional TTY services for individuals who are deaf, and many more. But because of this federal grant, we're able to provide these services at no cost.
Love it. And I often am shocked that we've got this amazing free program that nobody knows about, which is one of the main reasons you're here screaming it from the rooftop. So, folks, if you know anybody that's a part of hearing, especially if they're in Pennsylvania, you got the Pennsylvania Relay Program. But Jenny and her organization serves many of the states in the country, and most states have a some kind of relay support program for their residents.
That's right, Steve. And I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. So if you're interested in learning more about Pennsylvania Relay or any state's relay service, feel free to reach out to me and I can direct you to the appropriate individual to get information about your specific state.
Love it. Well, Jenny, thanks so much. Thanks for your support, and uh, hopefully you enjoy the discussion that we have today as well.
I'm sure I will, Steve. Thanks again.
You bet. All righty. Okay, so that leads us to now our discussion for the day, the backup plan for solo agers. And as many of you know who've been on our discussions before, solo aging is probably our number one topic. And so I'm always out there looking for innovative approaches and solutions for folks that identify as solo agers. And I forget how I stumbled upon Linda, but I tracked her down. I scheduled some time with her. I was absolutely blown away at what she had created. And Linda, I'm so grateful for you sharing what you've done with our community and talking about this. And then folks, if you see Julia on the screen, we're going to learn from Linda about this program, but Julia is a coach, actually the first coach for the backup plan, uh, and we're going to get some of Julia's insights as well. But Linda, let me start with you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what is the and how you created and what this program is.
Well, thanks, Steve, and hello to everybody out there. I happen to be in Minnesota, where it is chilly today. Um, my background is I spent 28 years in the public sector working on various different things. And one of the things that happened is that I got involved in doing a lot of improvement projects. How do we make things work better and looking at systems? And I got very, very much interested in that and what you do to implement changes in organizations and elsewhere in communities and whatever. So I have that backdrop. I also spent about 15 years teaching in 3 different accelerated degree programs at various universities, and my audience were adult learners. And so I got very much interested in how do you work and get people at the adult level who have a lot of real world experience. So I was able to tap into that experience. But what sort of launched me into this world of solos is the fact I am one. I have no family here in Minnesota. And the other piece that was actually even stronger motivated, my father was living by himself in the family home in northern New York with me here and my brother a long distance away. And there was a whole bunch of things that came up as he aged. He had dementia, all kinds of things, where we're trying to do this long distance care. And it just occurred to me, he looks like he's, got the support he needs, but he's actually a solo too. And I started thinking about all the people who were out there, including myself, who needed to put together a support system. And here in Minnesota, I, was trying to put together my own plan and discovered there just really wasn't the kind of resources available that I needed. And then just found all these barriers and gaps that were out there for people trying to put a plan together. And so I thought, this is a systems issue. And I just got really interested and I said, well, maybe I should see if I can do something about it. So I literally just started step by step, trying one thing and then the next thing and just doing little pieces. And as I was looking around, this was
Linda,
about 10 years
oh,
ago. Hmm?
1 second. I don't mean to interrupt, but I've got a few folks in the audience. I can hear you fine, but we've got a few folks that are saying that they're having difficulty hearing you. So if
I'll
you
move
can,
closer to the microphone. Is that
yeah.
better?
So
Okay.
how does okay, and I'm getting some thumbs up and stuff. So just yeah, try to stay a little bit closer to your computer where the microphone is. Thanks so much. I didn't mean to
Okay.
interrupt you.
Well, that's okay. Um, so again, I started looking around and not just here locally, but across the country. And what I could see is there was starting to see some interest in activity around solos. And a lot of the things that were out there were like books or um, what I'd call a program where there's an expert leading a group of sessions with topics and that sort of thing. But my own experience in change management in the organizations and teaching showed me that if your goal is to be able to empower people to do a better job of managing for themselves, sort of the top-down information sharing approach is not sufficient. Information is only one piece of the equation, that you really need to have a framework for people who can feel like they can get engaged. So I started, doing a lot more research and looking at what is working. And one of the things I discovered is a number of people who have done research related to the power of peers, that actually peers have much more impact on people making personal changes than experts do. Very interesting research by a University of Pennsylvania professor who evaluated the Oprah Book Club. And the assumption was people were buying books because Oprah told them this is a great book. And when he actually dug into it, what he finds out was, well, that kind of, set a little bit of stage, but the people who were buying books were buying it because their friend told them that it was good, not because Oprah told them it was a good thing to do. So I
Yeah,
like,
and I think also what they have in common is that they're all fans of Oprah Winfrey.
yeah,
part of a tribe. So, wow, fascinating.
And the research shows that people are much more attuned to other people like them. So they're looking for that. So that became a piece that I started playing with and saying, well, how could I put together a model that would fully engage people and would also have an impact on solos and help them build community and whatever. And I actually started working on this, and I tried it. Actually, I did 3 different rounds of testing of what was the right format, what was the right packaging for it. And the first one was kind of like, well, just give them the information, and that really didn't lead anywhere. The second round of testing was we put people together and formed some informal groups, gave them the information, and sort of sent them off and said, okay, go use it, and do your thing. Well, that wasn't enough structure, and so I said, that's not the thing to do. And so finally, I came up with this idea that we probably needed to have some kind of a sponsor for forming some kind of a group where solos could interact with each other. There needed to be a sponsor where that people might identify with and have that they would be a credible source, but also because that sponsor had some connection with the community that we were trying to reach. The other thing was, yeah, you have to give them the tools to work with, but these are not tools that tell them you should do this. These were things that were more about thinking and ideas, and here's some examples of things that work, and helping people to think to be more results oriented rather than saying, okay, here's a cookie cutter. These are the steps you need to go through. It was, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and recognize that you're the expert of your own life. And there's many different ways to go about getting that result. And it makes a huge difference whether you are a solo in a rural community without a whole lot of resources, or in an urban setting, or even a suburban setting. It makes a huge amount of difference. Context is just critical in terms of this planning process. Um, and so that became one of the core elements. Okay, there had to be a sponsor. We had to have the right tools with the right information. And then the third key piece was why Julia is here today. We needed somebody to kind of steer the ship a little bit, but not to be a facilitator, but to be a coach. And if you think about it, when people are playing basketball, the coach doesn't go dribble the ball. The coach keeps an eye on things. And when they see something is going amiss, there's some feedback, suggestions, kind of keeping it, steering it, whatever. But mostly it's the team that has to do the work. And so that's kind of what the model is for the backup plan. And so I said, what do I really want to try to accomplish with this? And again, back to my systems thinking, we need to start building better infrastructure out there so that there are more people who understand this population, but also who can also help be players in creating solutions. Which is again why the sponsor organization was critical. So one goal was to develop the capacity of existing organizations to work with solos. The second one was to really help people form a community of support. And we all know that, yeah, it's good that if you have some social connections and whatever, that you be healthier and mentally it's better. I mean, we know that that's a good thing to do, but also to provide this community of support where people could engage in shared information gathering, shared problem solving, just build those connections that they didn't have before. And the third part of it, which is actually in some ways the least important part of this whole thing, was to see that the people who participated in these groups would be have more support and greater incentives to actually build the pieces that they need in their own plan. People hate doing healthcare directives. I mean, they just procrastinate that all the time. Well, I think it makes a difference if you know everybody else is having the same trouble. and
Mhm.
they can talk to each other and say, well, what did you do? And, you know, how did you figure this out? And instead of having everybody go research, you know, a particular thing, break it up and have two people go look at something and somebody else look at something else, and then bring that information back so there's this information sharing. And it's also important to help people on their own to discover resources, you know, maybe with a little advice and help from the coach, but to actually go do the legwork rather than somebody else doing the work, because then they can develop some skill and confidence so that, you know, they can pick up and do it on their own when they need to. So it was that skill and expertise building that was also another piece of it. Um, and so basically what I created the material. There is a participant manual, there's a coach manual. I own the copyright and the license on both of them, but I make them available free. But the condition is I only make that available to people who are committed, you know, there's a sponsoring organization, there's a coach, that the pieces are in place. And I do a little upfront work with those folks, and then they go and they design the group and pull it together, and there's no one right way to do it. And Julia will tell you about what her experience is. But right now in Minnesota, there are 12 active groups and 2 that are just in the process of starting. So by the end of the year, there'll be 14. I have 7 more entities that have contacted me about starting groups. And what I'm so pleased about is that they're not all in the metro area. In fact, there are more in greater Minnesota right now than there are in the Twin Cities. And Minnesota has some vast areas where they're just really limited resources, not even good technology resources, internet and other things like that. So again, here we are offering some new infrastructure out there to the population and to the organizations in the state. So I'm going to just
Right.
stop because I know you'll have some questions, but I'm going to pass this off to Julia because she's the one that's lived through it.
Yeah, and before we pass it on to Julia, I want to just address a few of the things in the audience. I hope the
Okay.
folks that are having any audio issues are resolving those. We've done all we can do here on our end. And just remember, if you can't hear this we're gonna have a recording, okay? And you can listen to the recording later, but we've got all we can do on our end. And Linda, don't worry, I can hear you and many people can hear you as well. Um,
Okay.
Michaela is saying, asks, is she talking about a book or an organization? And folks, I want you to answer this, Linda, but um, folks, one of the main reasons that I want to have Linda on is this is an example of somebody who saw a problem that's of being solo and created a solution. And I'm absolutely blown away that she has not only created a solution, but it's replicated all throughout the state of Minnesota. And so 2 things. I'm going to share a form so that you could, if you wanted to learn more and if you wanted to follow her guidelines, that you might be able to do that. But also just thinking about it as a source of inspiration. Maybe there's something that you can do in your community that can support solo agers or support yourself a little bit better or differently. So those are a couple uh, of things there. But but Linda, to the person that said, is this a book or an organization? How do you like to describe yourself?
It's a model. This
A
is a
model. That
model
I like
for
that.
how people, it is not a program. Programs are specific, they have a beginning and end, they're usually expert led, and they're predefined topics. This is a model for creating a community based group of solos,
Love
a
it.
peer support group for solos with some, as I say, there's a couple of very short printed materials that are a key part of it. There's a sponsoring organization and there's a coach role. So it's a model for how you build community for solo older adults.
Love it. All right. Now that's a great transition for Julia. All right, Julia, you are
I
one of the coaches, and And so tell us a little bit about your story and then your role as a coach and what you see when you're actually running one of these these models.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to say Linda contacted me because I am the volunteer and service coordinator. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. For an organization called Longfellow Seward Healthy Seniors. And we are part of what is known as a living at home block nurse program. So I was working with older adults already and working to provide services such as in-home chore service, friendly visits, transportation. So when Linda contacted me, that was what was on my mind. Here's a way to get a group of people who perhaps can work through things that they need to work through, but can also perhaps start relying on each other for some of the services. We provide services through volunteers, and we don't always have enough. So maybe we can get a group of solos together, and they can start being each other's person. Um, I'm not sure if that's what happened, but it certainly um, there's a learning curve. I had trouble not being the leader of the group. I needed to step back and let people work through it themselves. And I think also a challenge that I faced was that people wanted to socialize, which is, makes sense. And so often we wouldn't get the work done that perhaps we needed or we thought we were going to get done. And I would worry about this, like, oh, this isn't going the way it's supposed to go. I'm not doing this right. But we've been going for almost 5 years now. And it's the same people, a lot of the same people who started back in, I think it was 2021. We were coming out of the pandemic, but we were not allowed to interact yet. We were doing online, and I think our actual first meeting was in a gazebo outside at this work, this company that is by us. And so there were about 8 people who met outside in a gazebo, and that's where it started. And it's gone through a lot of changes, um, but people have stuck with it. And some of the changes are that the original solos got what they needed and sort of they were concerned about certain things like healthcare directives and power of attorney, and they got some resources to get where they needed to go. Now what? Now what do we keep doing? And so we kept the group going, and it has become more social. And we also have presenters each month to talk about different aspects. We've had people talk about healthcare directives. We've had a death doula come in and speak about that. We've also had the park and recs come in to talk about being in nature and how people can be in nature as solos and accessibility. So it's all sort of great things. We've also had 2 separate, what I call working groups. And these are for people who maybe weren't original members or they weren't there so much to socialize, but to get the work done. And so they sort of branched off, and we just started one now that is just beginning, but branched off and they worked between themselves to get documentation, share resources together, and then join us for a regular monthly meeting. Um, so seeing how other programs work, because I think Linda mentioned we were one of 4 of the starting, and I think we all did it differently. We just all had our different styles, but it worked, and it's continuing to work.
I love it.
I was going to say one of the key principles of this model is that these should be self-managing, self-directed groups. And it's very much a bottom-up kind of approach to things. And so just because everybody is in a different setting, that's where the role of the coach and the people coming together and just saying, well, what do we need in this setting, and what are the resources in our location and whatever. So it's a bottom up thing. And one of the requirements that I didn't mention for the sponsoring organization is they don't have to do very much. They have to provide a place for people to meet for free, which, believe it or not, is a huge barrier to groups trying to start. It's where we're going to meet, and do we have to pay to rent a space? So we said, nope, you've got to give this. That's the one thing you have to do. But the sponsors are not expected to put a lot of money into this. It's really the space and to help find the coach, and help identify people who might benefit from this approach.
All right. I love it. Well, that was a great introduction and overview, and we've got lots of questions. So I think, how about if I just start diving in, and then if there's anything that comes up, just throw it out. So Steve asks, is there a website that lists the existing and forming groups? And is there a contact for those groups? This would be good to know before we start trying to create new ones. So Linda, so folks, Linda has requested that instead of everybody emailing her individually, that I gather any of you that are interested in learning more about this and potentially putting something like this in your community, fill out the form that I just dropped into chat, and then I'll send her the all the emails and inquiries, and then she can respond as a group. But Linda, to the question's point, is there like a website that you've created for this
No.
platform or anything like that?
Absolutely not. And there's a very specific reason for that, because the materials are free. And I want to make sure that people understand the philosophy and are committed to running the group the way the model is proposed. And there's basically no cost to anybody that's involved, unless the sponsoring organization wants to, pay to duplicate something or whatever, but there's no cost to either the organization or the individuals. But believe it or not, this actually is, the reason why it's working is because it's done on a case-by-case situation, where I can work directly with the people and help them frame it a little bit, and then be a support. It's not a mass production thing. So these are not ever going to be, the materials are never going to be available on any website.
Got it. Okay, great. And then Pat asks, do sponsors provide the first announcement of forming a group? So I guess you get an interested and motivated party who's sort of like, hey, I want to try this. First, they find a community, or they may be a part of a community organization, or they connect with one, and then they're the ones that are gonna recruit
Yeah.
members of the group. Is that correct?
They contact me, how do we do this kind of thing? And what we ask is that the sponsoring organization try to think about who they know who might be interested. And I don't know, I know Julia does a monthly newsletter for the people that are associated with her organization, and announces, we have this group, if you're interested, come to me. And mostly that's what, when people decide that they want to start it, they have some kind of a recruiting process like that. And it might be talking to people individually and saying, hey, we're going to do this, and I think you'd be interested. But it's very much all around the sponsor and the local and what's going to work in that situation for bringing people together. Most of the groups are between 6 and 12 people, I would say. They're small, but
Okay.
they seem to work. I mean, once you get larger and larger, then it's harder to meet. I don't know, Julia, if you have any thoughts about recruiting or any of that stuff.
I know that I have a list of probably about 40 people who are interested in the group. And I email once a month to let them know what is going on with the meetings. And I also include in the emails some interesting resources or other things that are happening around town. I would say you were correct. We have about 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 members that show up each month regularly. If we have a particularly exciting speaker, then we will get more people coming to an event.
Now, Julia, if I've always made the joke that a a group that has a lot of like-minded people that are attending, you could have a speaker talk about long division and they would still come together and have some kind of discussion. What are some of I mean, I know from hosting a lot of solo aging discussions that the medical and healthcare power of attorney is top of mind. But what are some of the common themes of discussion that you sort of see when you have your group meetings?
Yes, the healthcare directives, end of life is a big issue. Solo traveling was a popular issue. People wanted to know about that. Um, uh, like, I think that for a while we were delving way too much into sort of the end of life aspect. And we had, I mentioned we had a death doula. We did something on pre-planning and green burial and stuff like that. But people were interested in it. The other thing that our group of people are interested in is community politics, what's going on in the city, safety, things like that. And we try and have speakers to talk about that as well. I'm in Minneapolis, just to give you an idea. I'm in the third precinct, which was after the murder of George Floyd. That was where we are the central area for that. So that comes with its own challenges, especially for aging solos. So there is a safety concern in our neighborhood and just wanting to know what's going on. Um, that comes up frequently.
Now, Linda, thank you. Linda, Julia's organization uh, sounds a little bit like aging in place village type organization. Julia, is your organization part of the Village to Village network or oh, okay.
No, no.
But Linda, what are some of the other organizations that have taken this on? You had mentioned you've got 14 that are out there.
It's very interesting because we started with this, as Julia said, I first connected with what we call Minnesota's Living at Home Network, which is a series of nonprofits throughout the state. There's like 30 something of them that are all sort of their own little entity, but they're under a common umbrella. But the philosophy is basically to help people to stay in their homes as long as possible. And I happened to I used to volunteer for this organization, so I knew about it. I said, these are the kind of people that I think we want to attract. So there are a number of the living at home programs that have jumped on this, but we have a couple of churches. We have a Parks and Recreation Department that's sponsoring it. We have a couple of community centers that have jumped on board. We have just recently, I was contacted by a hospital system in northern Minnesota who are going to sponsor a group. There is a county human resources, not human resources, human services function that has contacted me, and they're looking at, maybe trying to do something within the county. A couple of counties have actually contacted me, but those are not up and running.
Wow.
Uh, age friendly, an age
Oh
friendly
yeah.
initiative
No,
has
the age friendly
contacted me.
initiative is
Yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yeah. Again, it's kind of like, well, it seems to work, whatever the setting. The key ingredients are, is this an organization that is willing to sponsor this and help and recruit people and provide the space? I mean, just do this little piece to help support people. And that's what I think is kind of the unique thing about this compared to some of the other ones, is that it is very low key. I say high value, low cost model that can be implemented in a lot of different settings. And
can be sustainable. I think that, I mean, I talk regularly with solos who want to make connections, and so they'll start a solo aging group of some sort, but being aligned with an organization ensures that that person could move on, and potentially um, the organization can find another coach or somebody to bring it to keep it going. And we've got a couple of, oh, sorry. Yeah.
no, go ahead.
We got a couple of questions about coaches from Allison and Ann. Are asking, are the coaches also solo agers? And just folks to refresh everybody's, there are traditional solo agers, I guess, no partner, no kids, but all of us have the potential to be a solo ager. We should all be thinking about our solo aging plan. But in general, have you found that this the coaches are solos as well?
Some are, some aren't.
Okay. And then is the
Um,
coach a paid or a volunteer position?
yes. For example, Julia is a staff person for her organization who is choosing to say this is a good use of her staff time. But we do have some people who are 100% volunteers.
Wow. Hey, hats off to your organization, Julia, for supporting this and enabling you to do this as part of your paid work. That really is, I completely understand why you've been doing this for 5 years, is that your organization is supporting this with resources. That's great.
Yeah, and I have to just say, I know that you said that there's no cost to this, and that's true, except for the cost of coffee, which is very important.
Yeah. Um, okay, let's see. Karen says, are either of the solo aging efforts, okay, are you working with any of the local council on aging or area agencies on aging?
Um, I actually, we have like about 7 AAAs in Minnesota, and I have been contacted by one, maybe 2 of them who may want to play a role in finding some organizations to sponsor, whatever.
Great.
Personally, I'm doing a fair amount of work with our age-friendly initiative here in Minnesota
In
on the plan.
Minnesota.
Just a little aside here. This is just one piece of the work I'm doing on solos. Um, and because it's sort of a self-building, self-sustaining model, I don't have to spend a lot of time on it because Julia's doing all the work and all the other coaches. Um, but the other things that we're doing is, I'm involved in changing some legislation that we're to have a better impact related to some of the solo things. Our healthcare directive statute needs upgrading, so we're working on that. Working on some research, systems research to really try to dig in deep. And for example, the classic situation that comes up is people who can't find rides to go for their colonoscopy. And so we're going to try to do some digging in and talking with facilities like clinics and stuff like that and saying, why do you have this requirement? What happens when a solo comes in the door? What kind of alternatives might we find that would make things easier for solo? So we're digging in and trying to really uncover some of the barriers and gaps, and then say, okay, now that we understand what's happening better, maybe we can jointly create some solutions. So working on a number of different pieces. So this is just one part of tackling this whole systems and infrastructure piece that we're working on.
Wow. I love the idea of recognizing this segment of the population better in legislation and public policy. That's really exciting, Linda, and I think it's really needed. Um, okay, got a bunch more questions here. Martha asks, how many coaches are part of this? So in your program, Julia, are you the only coach, or do you have several other coaches?
I have been the only coach. This new working group that we started, there is a volunteer coach who's going to be, I've done the first meeting with her, but she is going to continue on as the coach, as a volunteer coach. And I'm hoping that that continues.
Yeah, we have several of the groups that do have two coaches for them.
Now, do you ever have like a monthly Zoom meeting or a quarterly Zoom meeting where all the coaches from the different programs can get together? Have you done that yet?
It's very interesting because now that we have a critical mass of coaches, I have just sent out an email to all of them to say, how would you like to get together and have a Zoom meeting? So that's going to happen before the end of the year, which
Oh, I
we
bet
hope will
you
become a quarterly kind of thing that people can do.
that's really exciting. Yeah. And I think Linda, you had mentioned, I mean, you're in Minnesota and you've really, as you had mentioned, you're starting to get a critical mass with this movement in the state of Minnesota, but you've also had some inquiries from other states where they're following your model.
Well, the best example is in the Seattle, Washington area. There are about 6 groups, I believe.
Wow.
We had another community in northern Colorado that was trying some things trying it out for a while, but it seemed like it didn't work because they were trying to stuff it into some other stuff they were doing. They were not really willing to follow the model, and it didn't work.
Okay.
And so, but there's a possibility that it could be used in other places, certainly.
All right. Now Beth has a question that I know a lot of people are thinking about. Have you been able to serve solos who are living with dementia in any of your groups? Do you have any uh, experience with that yet?
It's possible that there are some members of some of the groups that might see individuals in that situation. The interesting thing is I actually was having some conversations last year with a woman in one of the suburbs here who was interested in trying to start a group that was exclusively for people with dementia. And we couldn't quite work all the pieces out. She didn't have somebody who could commit to being a coach in that situation. So it's still there out there as an idea that we might follow through, but we're not able to launch that yet.
Okay. And okay. Let me get to some other questions. Uh, Jennifer says, I work in senior centers in Virginia. Can't wait to learn more. Many of the people I work with live alone and independently. Yeah, have this would be a great uh program for a senior center to embrace. Any senior centers in Minnesota?
Yeah, as I say, there are two. There are
Oh,
two
okay.
doing
All
that.
right.
Yeah.
Um, and let's see. Allison says if you don't have an organization, can the coaches charge a nominal amount of support for their time and effort? Um, I guess, well, what would be your thoughts if somebody wanted to start something like this that didn't have an organization? I'm assuming you've really designed some guardrails on this, Linda. Your approach would probably be help that individual find an organization that could support this. And potentially, like in Julia's case, you could see if you could find an organization, they might actually um, have resources to pay the coach to get things going, I
Yeah.
guess.
Again, one of my goals really was to offer a resource that could be used anywhere with any. There are so many solos that are in the middle to lower income category, and there were hardly anything out there that was totally free for solos to participate. And I thought that was really important to offer something, which is why I'm not making any money off of this personally, even though I own all the materials and everything. I just didn't want to do that. So my condition, in fact, it's in the license agreement that to use the materials, you cannot do any kind of for profit or anything off of it.
Okay.
I,
Now,
yep.
yeah. So talking about organizations, I'm thrilled that we have Sarah Sheets on in the audience today. Sarah is part of a village that runs a solo aging support group, and I dropped in the recording of their how that came about, and it was basically one or two people just getting together, having chats, and before too long, they had this group of solos, and they basically found the village to adopt them as their sponsoring organization. And so, um, folks, if this is intriguing, the villages, as Sarah is saying, and I'll put in the Village to Village Network in chat. It could be a great, they're a great group for all solos to know about, number one, but could also be one that could serve as a sponsor for a group like Linda's.
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing is, what are you trying to accomplish? And, as long as you're doing something that solos can benefit from, I think it can take many forms. Now, I chose this one because I wanted to try it out because of my own experience and with self-managing work teams and things, because it's a good model for getting people, engaged and actually having some results. There's nothing wrong with people getting together and just schmoozing. I think that's perfectly fine too. But a lot of solos don't do some of the key planning steps because they just don't want to do it by themselves. And so I really wanted to find some kind of a mechanism that might be more conducive to people creating that's why I call it the backup plan, because it's a mechanism, it's a model for
Yeah. Now, Linda, let me ask you something. One of the things that I've found is that has really been exciting to me in the solo aging space is meeting resourceful solos just like yourself that are basically out there saying, okay, I need a support network. I need these things and creating something, whether it be like your backup plan or a group that meets at a library. Personally, have you found that embracing this and becoming a thought leader in this space has improved your confidence as a self-defined solo and navigating those waters?
oh, interesting question. um I just am having a swell time doing this. I'm meeting so many people, and I have had some of the solos involved in a couple of these groups send me thank you notes, um, unsolicited. And I think part of what we all want to do at this point in our lives is just have a sense of purpose and a sense of accomplishment. And I certainly am getting that from what I'm doing. And also, you got to keep your mind going. So this has been good to work on these issues, just to say, oh, what can we do? And I'm a great believer that you have to start at the bottom when you're solving problems. You don't start at the top. You say, where are people? And start where they are and get their input. And my hope is that in these solo groups, and I've seen this in a couple, that people start inventing things with each other. They say, we've got this need, and they just start doing things. One group I know, somebody was very concerned about, oh, I live alone and who's going to know whether I'm okay or not. And so they created a little check-in system with each other using their cell phones. I mean, I didn't have anything to do that. The coach didn't tell them to do it. They just invented it. And that's the hope for these kind of grassroots organizations, that people feel like they can just work with each other and do whatever works. It doesn't matter if it's only for three people.
Yeah, and folks, I'm so glad that you just shared that little cell phone check-in idea. Folks, that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to introduce you to Linda and what she's done is these little nuggets. Like it's sort of like you may say, gosh, that's great, but I don't want to invest as much time, but I've got two friends that are we're all identified as solos. Let's support each other, and this very much needs to be a grassroots thing. We have a lot of webinars and discussions on solo aging with people all over the country. But one of the things that I've found that people hunger for is, who are the other solos on my street, in my neighborhood, in my community? And this presents one solution. That's great. Now, I'm not familiar with this, but Nicole says, do you have an opinion on the ethels from AARP? It's She says it's more of a social connection group. And I wasn't familiar with this until just now. And I'll drop the website address in there, but it looks like a community for uh older women to gather. Are you either of you familiar with the Ethels?
I haven't
No,
heard of that, no.
but I'm sure there's just lots of those little things popping up all
Yep.
over the country. I do, because, and women are particularly good at coming up with these kind of experiences. Julia can attest to this. We don't have all that many solo men that have been popping into these groups.
Oh
Julia
no,
has
when
one, right? You have
I
one?
ha we have a few. We have
Okay.
I mean, a handful, but yes, it's mostly women.
Yeah.
whenever I do an online discussion, there's always there's a handful of men and they all say the same thing. It's like, is there any way that we could start a group for solo men? And uh anyways, the
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Just do it.
um yep. And I think that's another reason I wanted you to get you on there, is to it's the just do it mentality that Linda has shared in creating this. Let's see. Okay. Uh, all
I
right.
just got to say, I spent many years managing people, and I had a great deal of success working with self-managing work teams with my staff. And I just find if you give people the opportunity and a little bit of support, and you need a little structure to it, but if you just say, go ahead, come up with your ideas, bring them back, let's see if they work. I just believe in that model. It has worked for me in so many different settings.
I love it. Okay. Allison says, and what do you suggest people do to find a medical power of attorney if they don't have one? That's the question that I get most. Out of curiosity, between the two of you and running these groups, can you walk us through some of the problem solving when somebody feels like they don't have powers of attorney or resource for that?
That is a big issue.
Comes up, it's a huge gap for solos all over the country. Oh, it's a huge issue. One of the things I did early on in my research is I documented a number of options that I discovered in Minnesota. For example, in the Twin Cities area, we actually have two organizations that you can pay for them to be your healthcare um, representative, health power of attorney, whatever you call it. Minnesota calls it a healthcare agent. One's a for-profit, the other is a nonprofit. And the for-profit has operated very successfully for 20 some years. So, people get a little nervous sometimes when you talk about for-profit. But I produced a whole resource list that I provide to the solo groups about everything that I have found that provides something that is reasonably um, in the ballpark of something that solos might be looking for. For example, there's an organization in Minnesota called Wings that has a bunch of people who may have experience as guardians and this, that, and the other thing. And some of them will serve as healthcare agents for people. But,
Okay.
I think we all have to just keep digging and finding and documenting what we find.
Well, and one thing that I found in bringing together in this conversation is that oftentimes people just need somebody, it could be a fellow group member, to go through a little brainstorming process on people in their lives that might serve as a
Yep.
proxy. Because let's face it, folks, I mean, we want to exhaust those options before we go to a third party organization that we don't have any personal relationship with. However, in some cases, those personal relationships we have, because
They-
no, it's trust is the most important thing, and understanding your voice.
you know,
So, Julia, what are some of the directions that your group has gone in under this power of attorney question?
Well, we do have the resources that Linda uh, mentioned, but I've noticed that the just group members will share what they did. They share resources. We can't bring, you can't pull somebody from thin air if you don't know someone, but it's just researching or thinking outside the box on who it might be, who could help them. It's, it's hit or miss. That is a really difficult one. But
Yeah.
but knowing that there are paid resources there to fall back on is somewhat helpful.
And I'm putting the link for Wings in chat. Granted, it's in Minnesota, folks, but maybe taking a look at that, depending on where you are, you might be able to find a like-minded a similar group.
what I
Okay,
did
I
was
we
with the Wings group is I talked to them because they have a directory, and I asked them to put a little um, area there where they could indicate whether they would be willing to serve as a healthcare agent. So you can go into that website and you can actually pull up a list, see the names of the people who
okay,
will do
great.
that.
All right, let's see. Stephen asks, how have you publicized the groups? Like, can you give some examples? Do you use Nextdoor? Ways
I
that you
don't,
recruit? Okay,
I, I don't. I am not marketing the backup plan.
okay.
This is a
But Julia, I
bottom-up thing.
guess,
Yeah,
okay,
it's in our newsletter. We do a quarterly newsletter. We also do a monthly email blast that it's in there, word of mouth, which is actually probably the best way for us to advertise. But we are fortunate in that we're part of an organization that can send out regular notifications.
um, great. And and then uh someone mentioned that aging life care managers can oftentimes be a good resource for a healthcare proxy. Not always, but sometimes. And and then one solution is if you get somebody who's a healthcare proxy and understands your healthcare wishes, makes it a lot easier to get an attorney or a paid representative to be your financial proxy because they know there's a responsible party there to look at your healthcare.
Yeah.
Um,
It depends
but
entirely on what part of the world you live in, what part of the
yeah,
United States. People in northern Minnesota do not have the same easy access to resources as people in the Twin Cities, and I'm sure that's true in other states. So,
yeah.
that's the challenge. It's really situational.
All right, folks. Well, we burned through an hour pretty quick. I knew that this was going to be a great inspirational and thought-provoking discussion. And I think, one of the things uh that I feel was really well communicated, and I commend you, Linda, as being a real pioneer in terms of seeing a problem and creating a solution and creating a plan, not only for people to create a backup plan, but a plan so that your model could be replicated, which it has been. This is huge. I mean, it's so hard to just create one support group in a neighborhood. The fact that you've done something that's been replicated is amazing. It takes a lot of discipline and thought. And and I really hope that this has been inspirational to a lot of you out there. I'm dropping into chat and I'll have it on the recording link, a form that you can fill out. And that way I can provide Linda your interest in one big form as opposed to her having to sort through dozens of emails. Um, and Julia, I'm hats off to you and your organization for seeing the need to support solos and making a commitment in that area. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Um, before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom, Linda? Anything that you haven't talked about today that you'd like to share with folks?
Um, just a little piece of wisdom from my work. You know, we are kind of an individualistic society, and so there's a lot of belief that we're supposed to solve our own problems. And so the finger often gets pointed at solos, and kind of the implication is, well, it's your problem, you know, you didn't plan enough if you're having all these troubles. My research and my, you know, looking and talking and thinking is that this is much bigger. You cannot solve address the barriers and the gaps that solos face on the individual level. It has to be done by looking wider at the systems, and we have to partner with people who are involved in those systems and jointly work together. And that's what I'm trying to do in Minnesota. If any of you have access to the Generations Journal from the uh, American Society on Aging. Is that the right name? What am I calling it?
Yeah,
Anyway, the Generations Journal, the July 1923 issue has it's all about solos, but I have two articles in there. One is on the backup plan, which is a lot of what I've told you today. But also there is an article that I did on why we need to approach solos from a much broader framework than we're doing it. And it kind of lays
yeah.
out all the areas. So
I'm gonna drop the link to that. That was Sarah Gebar was I believe
yes,
the
she
guest
was the
editor
editor.
for
Yeah,
that.
sure.
And so I'm gonna drop a link to that in so folks not only can you check out Linda's articles, but there was a lot of good articles in that edition. I really like that one. Um, all right. Thank you, Linda and Julia, for spending time with us today. I'm really excited to see where things go and see what kind of ideas people listening to this come up with based on your inspiration. And thank you to all the audience members for your great questions. They're much better than the ones that I could ever dream up, and they're relevant to your individual needs. So that's really great. So all right. Well, thank you again. I really look forward to staying in touch and hearing where this movement is going and the great things that you're doing, Linda and Julia, with your organization as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for the
Thank
opportunity.
you. Thanks for having